To the average person, this may look like just a simple developer time lapse, but to me, it's full of secrets to uncover. We only have a few months before Witchbrook fully releases at the end of 2025, and don't worry, if you're still not quite sure what Witchbrook is, I will fill you in just a second. But first, what are all these secrets and where are they actually coming from is the first thing that we need to talk about. In March of 2025, we finally got an official announcement and first look trailer for Witchbrook. It has been accompanied by quite a few pieces of content, including newsletters, a developer blog, and a bunch of other video content they've published to their social feeds and website. Many Witchbrook enthusiasts, including myself, noticed a lot of parallels between the original development information that was released and what was in the trailer. With this, plus all the other additional content we got, the fans are really starting to see how the world of Witchbrook is coming together. If you already are very familiar with what Witchbrook is, you can skip ahead to the chapter called Developer Blogs, or if you're new here or just want to recap, here is everything you need to know about Witchbrook in 60 seconds. It's a magical, cozy life sim game that is being developed and published by Chucklefish in combination with another studio called Robotality, and was originally announced back in 2017, but it has evolved so much since then. The game takes place in a seaside city called Mossport, which is also home to a magical school called Witchbrook College. You will journey through this magical world, taking classes that cost tuition, by the way, and using the magic that you learn to progress through the game. Additionally, you will run side businesses, date other Mossport residents, and customize your own cottage and garden, forage, take in-game photos, play online in multiplayer with your friends, and much, much more. It is releasing November or December of 2025 and has been confirmed for Nintendo Switch 1 and 2, Xbox, and of course, Steam. There may be other consoles added, but nothing confirmed yet. Now, getting into the really fun part of the video, you are going to learn just how much thought has been put into this game and what the developers have done to further bring this city to life. Also, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe because about 95% of you are not. So we're going to start with the development blogs. And I know I keep calling it blogs, but there's actually only one episode out yet. But there is another that is predicted to come at some point this summer. We just don't know exactly when. However, there is a lot of information in this particular blog to keep us satisfied for quite a while. So with each blog, they're going to dive into a different part of the game, and where they started in this one has made me really excited, even though some of the details are mundane or seemingly mundane. For example, their first thing was about the rainstorms and just the weather in general in Mossport. So people's schedules will change, which is pretty standard when there is weather in cozy games, but also they might put on an umbrella when it starts raining, scarves and mittens in the winter, and then also the town will get redecorated throughout the season. So really what this means is just a lot of details have gone into making the world seem as realistic and ever-changing as possible, so you're not just looking at the same thing every time you walk by the same street or the same shop. So you can watch this time lapse and it will show how as the days go by, the flowers will grow. And as I'm going to talk about later, there's actually a festival that is based around this very progression. And there's also day and night cycles, which come into play in more than one way, but we'll get to more of those details later in the video. This is the time lapse you saw at the start of the video, and what is cool about this is it is actually a snapshot from an in-game day. There are two predicted characters actually in this video. I'm going to talk about them in a section at the end because we are officially introduced to a couple of characters, but there's a lot more that are predicted if you dig deep, and some people might want to save that until the game releases. But What you can see here is that there are all these characters walking around, and you might be wondering, is there that many NPCs in the game? Well, yes, but also no. Not every NPC will have a name or have quests or storylines associated with them. They have made it so they're populating the world where there's lots of people walking by and people going about their daily business that you don't always have to interact with. I think that really adds to the livelihood of the game. These NPCs will have schedules just like anybody else, and so different parts of the city will be busier at different parts of the day. The boardwalk and the beach will tend to be busier during the daytime, and then at night, the shops and restaurants might be a little bit more busy. There are multiple ways that you can get around Mossport. I think at the start of the game, it will be limited to probably just walking, but then you can also get a Vespa. You will eventually learn how to fly a broom in class, and there is an actual bus that you can take with its own schedule. So I'm really excited for the bus because I think it will be probably the best way to get around before you have a Vespa or can fly your broom. And as long as you make the bus and the bus schedule, I think it will speed up some of your traveling. You can see that it actually goes into the countryside, so you might even have to take it from your cozy cottage into the city, which I just think might be hilarious. Another thing that the developers mentioned is that you can actually cause a traffic jam. So while all the NPCs have schedules, the cars do as well. So if you clog these cars up, more are sure to come and there will be a traffic jam, and they will actually honk at you to get out of the way. I feel like I'm gonna spend a lot of time making traffic jams happen. Then they talk about how much the game has evolved and the scope of it has increased over the last 5 to 7 years. They actually moved to a new engine, which allowed them to upgrade the look of the game. And even in this side-by-side screenshot here, you can see just how much this comes to life from the old graphics. Look at those windows and the light pouring in. I personally think it is very worth the wait because of this huge upgrade and all of these features that are now baked into the game. I actually cannot wait for the second developer blog later this summer. We are now at the point of the video where some of you might feel like this is getting very specific and spoiler-esque. So here is your warning. If you want to stop watching, please just leave a like on the way out. But I kind of encourage you to keep watching because it's kind of fun to discover all this stuff. Let's dive into the oracles. We actually got the first Witchbrook Oracle in October of 2021. This caused sheer panic because everybody thought Witchbrook was definitely going to be coming out in the next 2 years. Fast forward, it's 2025 and now it's coming out. However, it does give us some insight into how the direction of the game evolved. So this Oracle article introduced 2 characters that I believe are still going to be in Witchbrook. They may have new names at this point, but right now their names are Finkel Blomgren and Ren Pasternak. Both are predicted to possibly be romanceable. It also mentions that there is a fall festival surrounding pumpkins. So maybe it's enchanted pumpkins that we can roll with our magic and that factors into the judging. Truly don't know, but it does seem like that will be one of the fall festivals. It's also noted that this festival takes place in the Wildflower shop. I don't know if that's changed because the map seems to have expanded way bigger now, but this shop definitely still exists and you can see it in the trailer. There aren't that many other clues in this developer blog. It seems pretty basic. However, as we learn more about the game, something in this oracle might still stand out. Now we do a full-on time warp to April 2025. That is the next Witchbrook Oracle issue 2 that we have got. It came out right after the official announcement trailer, so it makes sense they wanted to ramp this back up. At first glance, it seemed like a pretty basic but exciting look at the game. But since then, there have been so many things we have learned from this specific oracle. So let's break it down very quickly, and then we'll go back to some of the things that we've learned since. So this oracle introduces Meadowlark Farm, which is pictured in the trailer, and it has huge tulip fields, and it is basically going to be a destination for a major spring festival. This festival is all about tulips growing, but it also is going to have competitive trinket shopping and a competition where you make your best trinket to sell. We also learned that some of the local shops will have pop-up food trucks, and I think that is just a very cool touch to build the world and make it come alive. Then we met the editor, who was revealed to be Eli Ivers. So we learn a little bit about Eli here, and at first I didn't think much of it. I kind of thought that Eli was going to be just this behind the scenes editor that helps narrate the story, but was I ever wrong? We'll come back to that in a second. Then we get a little bit about broom flying, which is a gameplay feature. It also mentions Lorena P., who could be another NPC. And then the last thing that's mentioned, and this is kind of a recurring theme within these oracles, is kind of some references to spirits, eldritch, or ghosts, or maybe all of them, honestly. And so we start to get some cryptic messaging, and we'll talk about how cryptic it gets in just a little bit. Now, the little extras at the bottom of this oracle compared to the last one, I do think are more targeted to hint at some gameplay features, like herbs and brewing different teas or potions. I think that will be something you learn in class, and I think will likely be tied to the quests that you can complete on a day-to-day basis, and we know that you also do deliveries. The snacks hint at vending machines, which we learn a little bit more about in a future oracle. And then this season's hat styles, well, we're gonna come back to that in just a second. Let's go back up to the beginning. If we go back and really look at this screenshot, we actually didn't know it at the time, but Eli Ivers is actually featured in this photo. This is also our first look at pets, which have been confirmed to be in the game. And I think behind Eli, I think this is Sal, who is mentioned in a future oracle. So again, there's all these little hints, and all the oracles are kind of tying together. You also can see in this photo, there's also a little kitty, and as I mentioned, you'll have a pet or familiar. And so it was kind of our first hint to that. Back to Eli, as I mentioned, I kind of thought he was going to be just like this behind the scenes character, but since then, we met Eli in an official trailer, and a lot of the things that he has mentioned showed up in that trailer. Remember when I just said that these tiny ads at the bottom of the oracle seem to hint at other things that we have later learned? The little extras at the bottom of this oracle are more targeted to hint at some gameplay features. This season's hat styles reference the hat shop, which we learn Eli works part-time at. Very, very clever world building. And speaking of world building, we also see here with the Postal Service ad that it has an address, 3 Marble Road. It seems like kind of just an aesthetic touch to the oracle, but we know that every building in Witchbrook is going to have an actual address, which I think will add a very cool touch to the questing and delivery aspect of the game, and just make it feel like a real city. All right, so not even a month later, on May 13th, we got another oracle. So we are at issue number 3. So what we see here is Calico Threads, which is a clothing shop in Mossport. We meet Hana, who gets an official romanceable character trailer shortly after this, and we learn she works at the shop pictured here called Calico Threads. And we learn a little bit more about the spooky and spectral energy that is definitely going to be associated with the college. So remember when I said the little extras at the bottom of this oracle are more targeted to hint at some gameplay features? there is likely a school shop that has school-oriented merch or clothing. Evening classes, which I think has been confirmed that there is going to be daytime and nighttime classes. One of the classes being astronomy, which makes sense to take place at night. But on that note, I think that is a really, really cool way to break up the day where maybe you go to class in the morning, do some tasks in the afternoon, but then it gives you something to do some of the evenings when you have class. So I think that makes the day a little bit more balanced. You know, in other cozy games, sometimes you just want to go to bed early to start the next day. I like that you might have to kill some time before you hit up your evening class. I also hope there are some activities and foraging that you can do specifically at night, because maybe there's some magical plants that you can only see in the dark or something like that. It also hints that when we get to issue 4, that they're going to talk about the tourist season of Mossport, and boy do they ever. So Oracle 4 was again about a month later on June 24th, 2025. This one references a lot of things we saw in the first couple oracles and introduces us to yet another predicted character. Remember I talked about Sal? This is Sal, future oracle. So he's actually mentioned in this one. So all of these oracles are really winding together. It talks a lot about that there's summer, that it's officially there's tourists, and that might seem like, okay, that's great, but does that actually change in game? Well, yes, it actually does, because there are hundreds of NPCs that come and tour the town. And I believe with this mechanic that they've implemented, that in the summertime, there will be a lot more people. So it will feel a lot busier in the summer, which is super cool to me. So it talks about the boardwalk, a shop, and references Professor Bardot. She is featured in the trailer. It also references a fish and chip shop, which you can see here. And it talks about the briny brush, which is pictured in this oracle here. So it talks about Sal and kind of describes him. And then it talks about one of your coven mates or classmates, Cormac. And he is kind of the tortured artist trope. So again, it introduces us to more characters, shows who has jobs and where. It also talks a lot about the boardwalk being that hotspot for a lot of action and a lot of shopping. It also references, again, the vending machines as it did in the previous oracle, and it talks about some camera film that you can buy that has different filters on it. For example, vintage warm. So it leads me to believe that you actually can take pictures in game, and then you can also develop those photos. So I wonder if you can make like a little bit of a photo book to capture your journey so far. I think that is a very, very nice touch. It's also predicted that you might be able to stop and make some of your own art on the walls around town. So again, just a lot of things to do to make this world really come to life. So then it references the broom parking drama, which indicates that there's actually parking spots for your brooms. I don't know if you're actually gonna have trouble parking if you're running late or if it's really busy. I just think that would be a hilarious, ironic mechanic to have if you can't find parking. Some people are gonna absolutely hate that, but I kind of live for it. And then sand in the ritual circle again. It seems like people are going to class and dirtying up the ritual circle, but I think mostly this is just a reference to this ritual circle that we clearly see in the trailer. So that covers all the oracles so far. Surely we must be done with them, right? Wrong. There is another layer to the oracles. In Oracle 2, 3, and 4, there are actually hidden secrets that give you even more information about the game. Remember when I said references to spirits, eldritch, ghosts? Yeah. If you want to go figure this out on your own, skip this section. So in Oracle 2, there are 4 letters that are very cleverly hidden. It took me a while to even realize they were different colors, and they spell the word omen. Now, if you go into your browser and go witchbrook.com/omen, it brings up this. From this photo, it seems to be some sort of shrine or nod to this eldritch or spirit that obviously exists in the game. There is lots of imagery for day and night, sun and moon. So I think that there is going to be some connection to the day and night cycle, maybe different spirits for day and night, not sure at this point. Moving on to Oracle number 3, and this is where I need to give a very big shout out to Morden from Discord because they really helped me with the last 2 oracles because I got a little bit stuck myself. The first letter of each paragraph spells scared. So you can throw that into your browser, witchbrook.com/scared, and this appears. That's about as far as I got. Where Morden helped me out is that you can actually rearrange them to sacred and cedars. They all bring up different cryptic messages. This one seems to say, help, why scared, not safe. This one we can actually read pretty clearly. You can hear me. Please, if you can understand this, don't hurt me. And then this one seems to be would help, so dark. You don't, are cruel, no. And then Oracle number 4, this one I had no chance on. So shout out to anybody that got this on their own, but there's a big space in between the words repeating and sounds. And so the answer to this one is a repeating sound is an echo or echoes. And that gave us this message here. You're still here, aren't you? Thank you. I'm not sure where I am, but I feel you. I haven't spoken to anyone in I don't know how long. I won't hurt you either. I just need to know you're real. So clearly this is all building up to some reveal of a gameplay mechanic, a character, a theme, or all of the above. And I am so excited to see what it is. We made it to the final section of the video. If you made it this far, you're a real gem. Please hit the like because this video took way too long to make, and I'm going to go over the character speculations. So I mentioned quite a few characters already in this video. Here's a quick recap of them right here. There's also a bunch that are less clear, but they are featured in the oracles, trailers, and screenshots. Here are some predicted characters. Let's start with the gals. So these 2 are featured in trailers and screenshots, and you can notice there's just quite a bit more details in their outfits. So that's why we think that they might be main NPCs. So there are these 3, and we also have a couple names floating around, one being Lorena. Remember when I mentioned Lorena P, and then also Mathilde? Any of these 3 could honestly be either of those names, or they might have completely different names. The NPC with the purple hair we have slightly more information on because at the end of the trailer, they have this very cool photo that depicts life in Mossport, and you can see that this NPC actually works at Olive's, which is a coffee shop. Now, I don't think this is Olive because so far all the NPCs that are romanceable candidates work at a shop but are not the owner. So I don't think this is Olive. So when I said we have slightly more information, that is just it. And then for the guys, there's only one that I can identify at this point, and he is known on Discord as Dragon Daddy, and I hope that's just his name, but he is featured quite a bit, as you saw at the beginning of the video. From the little bit of content we have, to me, he seems kind of like a rich, maybe snobby little brat type of guy, but honestly, that just makes me want to get to know him even more. We also have some professors, one that I mentioned earlier in the video, Professor Bardot, or because she uses French, maybe it's Bardot, I'm not sure. Then we have Professor Wix, who's featured in the trailer as well. Then we also have this, I believe, unnamed professor, and she's featured in the Nintendo Direct trailer. Hopefully we get a name soon though. Lastly, we have a bunch of names floating around, but we don't know if A, they're for sure in the game, and B, if they are one of the NPCs that have already been pictured. We have Dusty Inkwell, who is the original editor of the Witchbrook Oracle. It's unclear if they were renamed to Eli Ivers, or if that character will still appear, but they're just not the editor of the Witchbrook Oracle. We also have Violet Mackenzie, who is one of the children that live in Mossport, and her father, Justin Mackenzie. I did read somewhere that people thought that those characters were actually rewritten or don't exist anymore, so we'll have to wait and see. And then I also mentioned Olives. That is one of the businesses in town. I'm sure that that is going to also be a character, but we're gonna have to stay tuned. So, what did I miss? Speculations, names, information, NPCs. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything that you found. And just so you know, I'm going to make a part 2 once the next developer blog and the next Oracle come out. So probably near the end of summer. And then I will dive deeper into all of these topics and cover any information that I've missed. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at the next video.